Hello, everybody, and welcome to Office Hours. Hot for Teacher. This is episode number 4 in a series of episodes. I haven't decided how many yet. Probably a lot, if Hot for Teacher is anything like regular Office Hours. And I'm very glad to have you here, because today we're going to be talking about relationships. There's going to be some innuendos. There's going to be some advice. And I hope that you walk away from this feeling warm and fuzzy, like me. So if you haven't been here before, if this is your first episode of Hot for Teacher, you might be like, what's up about this? What is happening? Who am I? What am I doing here? Where did these blood stains come from? If you're thinking that last one, get yourself some help. Otherwise, Hot for Teacher is a write-in relationship advice show. It's a spinoff from the tabletop game master call-in advice show, Office Hours. And every week on Hot for Teacher, like with Office Hours, I answer 3 questions from you, my delightful audience, submitted in advance to www.adam-koble.com/hot-4-teacher. These questions tend to be about friendship, about love, about relationships, and about other related quandaries of human interaction. Before I get into the questions, before we start asking and answering and doing the whole rigmarole, I wanted to just mention to you, as I do before each other episode, that if anything that we talk about here on Hot for Teacher feels strange in your brain, makes you confused or upset, feeling not certain what's going on in your life, I want you to be able to talk about it. I would like to invite you to discuss what I'm talking about if you're watching live in the chat. If you're watching after live in the comments, or visiting the Math Squad Discord server, where these kinds of conversations often take place in the old Real Talk channel. I just want to make sure that you know that this is not the beginning and end of all relationship conversations. I would like to encourage you to take what you think about here today in this episode and carry it out into your life. Think about what we discuss moment to moment as you move through your life. I mean, I think about relationships all the goddamn time, and I think you probably have them all the time, so it's worth thinking about them. Communication, just like in a role-playing game, in relationships is the most important thing. And even if your relationship is just an hour here with me and the rest of the audience once a week, you've got a relationship. Quick update for week 4 of the show. Week 4 going forward, I have a post office box now. So if you, my delightful audience, want to do something old-fashioned and submit your questions by snail mail, you can. Weird. So if the internet form isn't good enough for you, bust out a piece of paper, write down your question, put it in an envelope, write on the front of that envelope, Adam Koble, P.O. Box 37057, Gordon Park, Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, V5P 3X0. Put a stamp on it, put it in the mailbox, and I will receive your question that way. That's a whole new venue to get at me. You can find all of that information on the contact page for my website as well. I encourage you. Send me your Dear Adam letters. I'm all about it. So, speaking of Dear Adam, speaking of that, let's find out what today's first question is. Shall we? It's a long one, and I'm going to read it to you. It comes to us from an anonymous submitter. Our anonymous asks, I'm in a long-term heteromonogamous married relationship. I'm very in love with and attracted to my wife, who is incredible to me and a great mom to our kids. I'm writing because I'm struggling with how to be honest about the way I've felt changes in my attractions and desires, specifically as they relate to gender. I hadn't felt attractions like this when I was younger, but now they're there. Being in this committed relationship, these feelings aren't something I want to act on with different partners, but these feelings are a part of me, and I feel like I'm being dishonest by not talking about them with my wife. I'm just not sure how to approach any conversation, whether it's with her, my kids, the rest of my family, friends, about what's maybe kind of an ambivalent bisexuality, especially since all evidence points to me as a straight man who's only dated or slept with women who's in a straight marriage. So, Anonymous, anonymous question asker. I'm gonna rephrase your question. I'm gonna practice a little active listening. I'm gonna rephrase your question just to make sure I'm getting it right. And since you can't give me any feedback, I'm gonna have to take a guess at what you're asking and then answer that question rather than necessarily speaking to some deeper truth of what you're after. I would, if we were sitting face to face, I would ask you some follow-up questions here. This is a limitation of the format, so I'm sorry if I misinterpret this question. And actually, to speak more directly to this, this is worth mentioning as a sort of blanket for all the questions I get. If you submit a question and I only answer like something adjacent to or partial answering of this question, hit me up to clarify. Feel free to tweet at me, hit me up on Discord, send me another message and be like, hey, so you answered my question, but like, here's some clarifying information. And I love the idea of revisiting questions if I need to clear stuff up. So don't worry, this isn't like your only shot. So if I screw up somehow and I miss the point or whatever, go ahead and hit me with more information. So, Anonymous, what I'm hearing is that you're having some gay feelings. I'm hearing you might be feeling the gay. And what I'm hearing is that you're in a stable, nested relationship with someone, and that relationship is functional. It's working for both of you as a romantic, sexual, and co-parenting model. I'm not hearing you talk much about your own orientation, which is understandable, but I am hearing you say you're feeling stuck and not sure how to express yourself, right? Like Anonymous mentioned in the question, I'm starting to feel some things. All evidence points to me as a straight man. Anonymous used the phrase ambivalent bisexuality, but there was no clear, like, this is how I feel. This is my clear understanding of myself, which is fine. That's totally okay. But I do hear some of that frustration. I do hear a little bit of the, like, I don't know what to do. The feeling stuck, not sure how or what to express there. This stuff can be super complex, right? This balance of what we feel versus how we act. The balance of secrecy or privacy, which are often two sides of the same coin. What I might call privacy, you might call secrecy. Disclosure, right? What should or shouldn't be disclosed in a relationship. This idea that in relationships, especially monogamous, loving, close, sexually exclusive relationships, honesty is expected. Sometimes, nay, demanded from people. Privacy in nesting relationships is very complicated. Part of my desire to avoid nesting relationships tends to come from my need for a very clear sense of my own emotional space. I don't want anyone to feel entitled to the inner workings of my mental landscape. But we're not talking about me. We're talking about you. And I'm sorry that you are feeling a struggle over this. I think the especially different thing here, the trick that's making this more complex for you, is you don't have a desire to act on the thing, right? So we'll get to action and thought soon. So this kind of thing can be really hard, especially when we value honest communication with someone we love as a form of self-affirmation and a means towards intimacy, right? Being honest can feel intimate. Part of intimate relationships of all sorts for many people is the ability to exist with a integrity and openness to express what we're feeling, even when those feelings aren't for certain or tied to a particular action. In fact, I have heard intimacy referred to specifically as that feeling, right? The ability to share who we are with others that doesn't hide, dilute, or reform that self-image for someone else's sake, and to do so without feeling judged. Does that definition of intimacy ring true for you? I think about this sometimes, about feelings of judgment, both judgment of the self and fear of external judgment on us. Part of revealing ourselves to others is their response, right? we, as identifying people, ultimately we're all some combination of how we see ourselves and how we perceive that self being perceived by those around us. In the play No Exit, which you may or may not be familiar with, in the stage play No Exit, existentialist philosopher and author Jean-Paul Sartre says, "L'enfer, c'est les autres," which is French. So that's how you know it's existentialist, because it's French. L'enfer, c'est les autres means hell is other people. Which, you'll see edgelord Twitter use hell is other people to refer to, a lot of different things. But what Sartre meant when he said that was that our sense of ourselves can be assaulted, winnowed down, reformed, or utterly destroyed simply by the observations and pressures from the other, right? From other people. What we fear, or can fear, especially when we have a space of comfort and normalcy, is the disruption of that space. And for it to be our fault for disrupting it with our innermost secret thoughts, with our truth. And I want to be flip here, and I know this isn't my full answer, but what I want to say is, why have fear? Other people don't matter. Only you and your truth matters. But in all honesty, it's more complex than that. I think the core of the answer is still integrity to the self must come first and before all other forms of integrity. But I acknowledge that you have a family and you have a relationship that you might worry is at risk from being able to express these things. Often we're socially encouraged, if not outright programmed, not to rock the boat, especially when that boat is the SS heteronormativity, right? Full of fruitful multiplication and is seen by the rest of the fleet as a positive relationship, right? This is a ship we are encouraged not to sink. The fear that you're feeling, in part, is a fear of that displacement. If you admit you're having some feelings that represent a change in your sexual identity, you're admitting in some way that what you have now here in your relationship may not be everything. This is a thing that I think straight people can have some anxiety around. And I don't mean you, because I'm not hearing you identify as a straight person, but perhaps your wife, who identifies as a straight person, may have some anxiety around, well, if my monogamous partner desires sexual contact with other people who are not the gender that I am, the likelihood that I cannot now provide everything that I am supposed to provide for this person has increased, right? The relationship is no longer perfect, which, of course, it isn't perfect. Perfect is a lie. Perfect is false. Nothing is perfect, but fear is an irrational creature. And that fear of being the one who confuses or disrupts a good thing with your inner thoughts, with your truth, is a hard one to overcome. What if, your fear might say, she rejects me? What if she becomes afraid I'll cheat on her? What if by speaking these things out loud, I'll be rejected and our relationship will suffer? How will I tell my children that my wife and I are separating because of daddy's gay feelings? It's fucking terrifying, right? That fear can be real. I feel you. You're not wrong to feel any degree of that. Not because those feelings are rational, but because there's a seemingly enormous gap between risk and reward here. Now, on the one hand, your reward is that you could risk it all for the sake of honesty, to live your truth and do what to me feels like the right thing here. What you get out of it is the relief of being open about your feelings and the deepened sense of intimacy with your wife. Acceptance is a wonderful feeling. It's the opposite of judgment, right? It's the ablation of that minefield of judgment and the arrival at a place where you feel accepted by yourself and by the people that love you. That's your reward. But on the other hand, the shitty part of your brain that's been socialized to demonize non-normative narratives and relationship, the part of your brain that contains some degree of socialized homophobia, plus a bunch of your own don't rock the boat fear response, is probably telling you, if you fuck this up by being real with your wife, you stand to lose everything, so shut up and keep it to yourself. Besides, you don't even want to do the gay stuff. You're just thinking about it. Now, I think that we both know that that's bullshit. I think based on your description of the person you're married to and your relationship with that person, it sounds to me like you're in a pretty safe place to share your gay thoughts with the person you love and who loves you. I'm going to believe that this question is more about how do I do this and less about should I do this. And we'll talk more about that. I hope I'm right about it. It sounds like you two have a strong bond and that something like you having some feelings of gayness isn't going to risk damaging your relationship. Now, you mentioned at the end of your question that there is no evidence that you're not straight. And you said, too, you don't necessarily want to act on the things you're thinking about, on these desires for some form of intimacy or contact with people of genders that are not the same as your wife, yeah? And I want to reinforce this, and I'm going to reinforce this throughout Hot for Teacher, because I think this is a thing that people feel a lot. Your feelings are not any less valid because you have not acted on them. Your feelings and desires can be totally real without ever being actualized. What a weird world it would be if we forced people to qualify their identity with action. Oh, I'm sorry. You're not actually straight yet. You need to have verifiably done a straight sex with someone. Come back to us when you have proof. I mean, where would asexual people be if that was the case? I'm sorry, you're not allowed to be asexual. You had sex once. If you want to identify as a straight dude, don't let your gay curiosity fuck that up for you. If you want to be a bisexual because you think Chris Evans might look nice naked on top of your piano, but you've never, done gay stuff, that's okay too. As long as you're being honest with yourself and representing your feelings and thoughts with real integrity and doing so in good faith, your identity is your own fucking business. I wanted to talk about this because I think the core of your question is so kind and refreshing. And I just want to call that out. Everyone, look at Anonymous for a moment. Imagine this lovely individual in your mind. Anonymous seems motivated to ask this question just to be an honest person, which I think is really sweet. I think a lot of the time when we talk about identity, we're talking about being true to ourselves, which is important. But it's nice that Anonymous's jam here seems to be about sharing yourself with other people in a way that has integrity. And that's kind of beautiful. Anonymous, everyone is imagining you as Chris Evans right now, naked on a piano. It's happening. Anonymous, if you are Chris Evans and you're naked on a piano, thank you. Thank you for being you. Listen, I know that it can be scary to live the life that you want, to be yourself, even if it's just about talking about your feelings honestly. There is so much vulnerability in exposing who you are and what you feel when you're contending with worry and doubt and kind of low-grade socialized homophobia. All relationships have a degree of vulnerability built into them, even the smallest ones. Letting someone near you in any way is a form of vulnerability. Caring about anything is an act of vulnerability. Even the tiniest thing, like, hey, I really like chocolate ice cream, is an act of vulnerability, because someone could be like, chocolate ice cream's for fucking dummies. You suck. And then you can be like, ow, my feelings. Vulnerable. I suppose the advice I have here is, just do it. Maybe I can't give you particular advice about how to go about it, because I think that kind of conversation is about the tenor of the relationship it takes place in and the ways those people interact. But I can, though, encourage you to be true to yourself and to your relationship, which sounds like it's built on a pretty solid fucking foundation of honest sharing. And don't downplay this either. Don't go in saying, hey, so here are some things I'm thinking about, but don't worry, I would never act on them, I promise. Don't walk in with an apology, because I find when you go into a conversation like this, pre-apologizing preloading answers to a potential worry, you can end up creating or exacerbating those anxieties where they don't otherwise exist. Instead, look at this as an act of intimacy. Offer an opportunity for more. Say to your people, here I am exposing myself vulnerably to you. I am asking you for an act of kindness, for reaffirmation of the intimacy that I believe we already have. I think that you want to share this stuff for all the right reasons, and I think that's absolutely the right place to be coming from. I guess all you can do is just be honest about your anxieties while you're talking things out with your wife. Don't be afraid of being afraid. Uncertainty is okay, vulnerability is okay, and it sounds like you're in a pretty safe place to be vulnerable. I know that this can feel like a scary conversation, and I bet your wife's going to do a pretty fucking good job listening and reassuring you, and in the end is going to be thankful for the intimacy that you've created and offered by sharing this with her. Good luck, Anonymous. I hope it's going to work out as well as I think it will. Our second question is a pretty common one, I think. I think a lot of people have some variation of this problem once or twice in their life. And it comes to us from my friend Kelsa. Kelsa asks, I've had a crush on one of my best friends for pretty much as long as I've known him. Obviously, my feelings have morphed and changed over the course of 11 years. And intellectually, I know we would never make a good couple because of various personality/ideological differences, which have become obvious over the course of our long friendship. But I still find him disarmingly, distractingly attractive. He's distractive, everybody. So how do you deal with crushing on your friends, especially when there is no hope of romance or intimacy? So this is a super common thing. Not to downplay what you're experiencing or feeling, Kelsa, but this narrative is so common. The idea of, I'm in love with my best friend, or just even unrequited crushes, plays into the entire relationship escalator anxiety narrative so fuckingly hard. It's the worst. It plays right into that. What you're feeling, that desire for a different kind of relationship, that's real. And I'm sorry that that's something that you're suffering with. There is a ton of pressure societally to see friendship as good, but not enough. That romantic or sexual interaction is somehow more than friendship. When we feel strongly about people, these crush feelings can lead to frustration when we can't resolve them into some kind of change in the relationship. It's an incredibly common thing. I think most people have had romantic or sexy feelings towards someone who's close to them in other ways and not been able to act on it for whatever reason. In relationships, whatever their form, we have this, I don't want to say expectation, but it's not hope either. We expect a precedent of reciprocity. We expect equity of behavior. That if we are both just friends, it's safe and fine. But as soon as one of us escalates our feelings, suddenly it's awkward and uncomfortable. Bullshit. I call bullshit on equity. I call bullshit on perfect dynamic balance. Bullshit. There is no relationship in the entire universe that's balanced perfectly. There is no such thing as an even relationship. There are always people who like their friends more than they get back. There are spouses and partners who love each other differently. There are relationships of imbalance in everyone's life. It's just that somehow these particular relationships feel shitty for us. Like, they fuck things up because we feel a desire we don't want to feel. Or because we culturally have shit ideas around unrequited desire. So what I guess I'm saying here is that it frustrates me to see people feeling bad because, as Kelsa said, there's no hope for intimacy, when honestly, if you've been friends with this person for 11 years, you have intimacy with this person. 11 years. That's a long time. You have a relationship that has lasted a decade and is, I'm sure, full of moments of closeness and vulnerability and tension and struggle and glee and pain. You have something amazing that any person on earth would be lucky to have. And just because you think your friend is hot, there's some socialized feeling nagging at you that your relationship is flawed or tainted somehow. There's that, yeah, it's nice being friends, but he's so cute, I just want to smooch him. And since you can't act on that feeling, there's this tiny sliver of bullshit frustration that's got jammed into the relationship, right? Now, I know Kelsa a little bit outside the context of this question, enough to know that Kelsa is a good person and kind and thoughtful. Kelsa is a great human being. So I'm going to talk about this feeling more generally, the idea of escalation and entitlement and how it can fuck with a good thing. But I want you to know that I'm not addressing this. Kelsa, I'm not talking to you. Everybody else, I'm not talking about Kelsa. So let's talk about friendship. Let's talk about friendship and what a bullshit rep it gets in Western culture. Friendship is all well and good when it's bros before hoes. Friendship is all well and good when it's BFFs, but when you get two people who might have the opportunity to have a romantic or sexual relationship, friendship can become an example of second best, right? There's a narrative, especially for men, that being friends with a woman that you could conceivably be in a romantic relationship with or be having sex with, you are a failure. Especially if that woman is having sex with someone or in a relationship with someone who is less friendly than you are. There's this whole disgusting nice guy narrative around being friends with a woman, supporting her emotionally, spending time with her, caring about her feelings and life outcomes, and then, when you want more, being rejected in favor of someone who's a bigger asshole than you and getting all pissy about it. The thing is, if you're being supportive and friendly and kind to someone because you hope they will realize what they really want is a romantic or sexual relationship with you, makes you the asshole, no matter how nice you pretend to be. There's a lot of bullshit in this tied up around the devaluing of some traditionally femme-oriented behavior, right? Predominantly that doing emotional labor for someone or being there or being a good listener is all undervalued against being someone who gets to fuck someone else. There is a tragic undervaluation of friendship as a concept. The idea of mutual support, solidarity, shared interest, positive engagement, the stuff that makes up a friendship. The idea that sex or romance are somehow better or more significant or more important than friendship means we value friendship less and see it as a stepping stone towards those other things. We can feel, like Kelsa seemed to indicate in this question, frustrated when our bodies want to smooch up on someone and there is no hope for a relationship that includes doing sex things. All the social baggage aside, all the bullshit about not valuing friendship is equally valid and important as like other stuff. What can you do when there is a desire imbalance in your relationship? Because really, I think that's what can fuck this stuff up. I think the feeling of, I want to do the nasty shit with you, but you just want to play Mario Kart and eat tacos can feel weird and upsetting and can, if we let it, mess up the relationship. Because, man, Mario Kart and tacos is fucking great. But when you're distracted by all the smooching you're not doing, your stupid brain is going to ruin Mario Kart and tacos. The ultimate ideal situation here is to talk it out with your friend and be like, hey, I think you're super cute and it's fucking me up. And then be totally open to them saying, that's really nice, but thank you. No. It doesn't even sound like Kelsa here wants a relationship where romance or sex is part of it with that person. There's this admission that it just wouldn't work. Or maybe, and I'm not judging you, Kelsa, but maybe Kelsa is saying that to make herself feel better, which is also a valid way to get around these feelings, but I think it's better to address it. I believe that dealing with difficult situations is an act of intimacy. So maybe just being able to talk this shit out can diffuse it. I think it's really cool to share your feelings with your friends, so long as you're doing that without putting pressure on them. As a non-monogamous person, this is something I have a lot of experience with. Having crushes on people who are my close friends, but who are off the market. Right? Off the market. So what I tend to do is talk about it with them. It's a lot easier when it's not just me having feelings and them just going about their business. Sharing emotional stuff is part of friendship for me. I'll say, hey, you're real cute and I respect you. And I guess I also respect your monogamous relationship because I care about the things that are important to you. But I want you to know, I think you're super cute. That information is just me being honest with you and sharing, and you don't have to do anything with it. And if they're cool, they'll say, aw, thanks, buddy. And like, send me a blushing smiley. And I'll just leave it at that. It doesn't have to fuck things up. It doesn't have to get weird. I'm being honest. They're being honest. We leave it at that. Now remember, sometimes sharing your feelings with someone can feel like pressure for them. And if you're going to have that talk, you have to let them know. They don't have to say or do anything about it. It's not changing the tenor of the relationship in a way that they didn't consent to. Admitting your feelings and not immediately getting rejected is not consent to like flirt with them all the time. Remember, sharing your feelings with someone can be an act of intensity for them too. And it can be hard to handle. People telling you they want to bone you can fuck you up. Acknowledge and respect each other's boundaries and then get on with your friendship. The only real thing you can do here when you're feeling that like, oh no, they don't like me and I like them, or they don't like me how I like them feeling is get the fuck over it. Like, your feelings are valid and real and important, but goddammit, they're your responsibility. And if you're so fucked up over wanting to smooch someone that you cannot have a healthy relationship with them, stop having that relationship with them at all. Recognize it's a personal issue on your part that probably warrants further personal work. And like, yes, the conversation where you tell someone how you feel about them can feel like a lot of pressure for both of you. It can fuck up the relationship because socially, you're probably both engineered to think this is a big deal. It's not. Those socialized feelings are lying to you. It doesn't have to be a big deal. Be respectful, have the conversation, treat each other like humans, and neither of you need to freak out about it. I think we can coexist with people we want things from that we can't have. People are not affection slot machines who we yank on to get whatever emotional jackpot that we require. There are a lot of ways around it, but I think that honestly, just talking stuff out with people, respecting and acknowledging each other's boundaries, and acting with integrity towards yourself and others is the core of it. Be thankful for your friendships. Be happy for awkwardness and tension and intimacy of all kinds. Be happy for the closeness you have. Appreciate friendship for what it is, not some halfway stepping stone to something else. I got a lot of really hot friends that I don't get to have sex with, which is probably the best because I don't have a lot of time in my life. You get over it. I know a lot of married, dating, or otherwise monogamously entangled cuties. You get over it. I know so many cute straight guys I will never get to make out with. You fucking get over it. Value what you have. Disregard what you cannot have unless you can't get over it, in which case, bail on the relationship. Just for the love of God, don't poison Mario Kart and tacos just because it's the wrong kind of intimacy. All right. That rant's over. I need a drink of water. Goddamn. Joe asks, I recently conducted a research study on the experiences of people who watch a D&D stream and claim it impacted their life. A major part of the finding was that fans develop parasocial relationships, not parasitic, parasocial relationships with the players or streamers that function similar to AFK relationships. For example, role models. What is your experience with relationships with fans as a streamer? What are your observations of the relationships and the impact fans have with you, your players, and vice versa? Ooh, such a cool question. I like this question. And I don't just like it because I get to talk about me. I get to talk about you. Yeah. Yeah, you, right there. We're going to talk about us. Let's talk about us. We need to talk, chat. No, not like that. Don't worry. It's time to share some intimacy. As someone who both thinks about relationships all the goddamn time, and as someone who interacts with an audience in lots of different ways, I expend a ton of energy on the idea of a broadcaster-viewer relationship. This is my relationship dance. I'm doing the relationship dance. Here we go. I think just about every streamer that I know, every YouTuber or internet personality has a pet theory about how it all works, how the interaction goes, and how it should continue to go. These theories are, as with most ideas, the product of an individual's personality, privilege, and predilections towards relationships in general. I have my own thoughts on how to handle these relationships, and they're formed not only by my community, which, that's you, is in turn shaped and formed by my actions towards it, but by the various things that impact me as a person on the internet. So let's take a second to clarify some terminology in the question before we dig too much into things. So when Joe refers to parasocial relationships, he's talking about one-sided relationships where one person extends emotional energy, interest, and time, and the other person, the persona, is completely unaware of the other's existence. At least that generally is how I've heard parasocial described. That's the definition I usually use. And I think that it applies first and foremost to a kind of traditional, like old media celebrity model, a kind of pre-Twitter, pre-YouTube movie star type thing. But there are elements that remain the same. Unlike a truly parasocial relationship, there is actually some degree of energy, interest, and time that gets invested in both directions for a few reasons. I think for some streamers, it can be easy to fall into a codependent relationship with your audience or individuals in your audience. The idea that emotional investment can form around people who, say, donate large sums of money or who are long-term subscribers. A kind of capital to emotion transference can occur, right? Viewer donates a large sum of money. subscriber feels a rush of endorphins and pleasurable experience chemicals upon realizing that they've just been given a bunch of money, which will affect their life in a positive way. They ascribe that positive feeling to the person who gave them the money, and that can develop a relationship there based purely around, again, capital to emotion transference. I think that there's a proximity and regularity affection that can build too. This idea of someone being a regular in chat. You see their name over and over. They become familiar to you. You understand the way that they communicate. They're a flag of familiarity and comfort in an environment that can sometimes be uncomfortable or scary, right? Sometimes, I mean, I know this is true for me, and I think that every broadcaster has this experience. The feeling of, when I sit down to stream today, will anyone be there? And that feeling of gratitude when we see our friends, right? I said that word without any hesitation. When we see the people that show up regularly appearing in chat, and we're like, yay, I recognize these people. Thank you. You're doing the thing. You are alleviating my anxiety. So you can build that proximity and regularity affection. For some streamers, there is a performative aspect of relating to their audience where it's a kind of act, however it's intended, wherein the performative aspects of affection are enacted as a kind of bonding ritual. This is the, oh, yay, hi, it's so good to see you. Like this kind of like, I am acting in a way that seems like I have affection for you, even though I don't actually feel that thing. Now, this is all hypothetical. I have not talked about me yet, but there are lots of different ways that people interact with their audience in varying degrees. But for me, my relationship with my audience, that's you, tends to be twofold. I have a relationship with the community, so like Math Squad as a thing, and I have several relationships with individuals within the community. Maybe you. My relationship with the community at large is a sort of pseudo-architectural one. I tend the community. I try to influence and guide it and its behavior positively as a sort of gestalt entity, and as a gestalt, it supports my continued efforts to do so. With individual audience members, my relationships vary as wildly as they would with anyone. Some folks I simply recognize the name of, and I'm happy to see in chat. It's nice to see the same people. It's nice to feel like they're coming back to attend the things that I'm doing. Others I know from having a conversation or two about directly related things, right? I might remember when someone corrected a rule that I got wrong, or made a funny joke, or drew me some cute art. I might remember that someone likes to post snake facts in chat. I might remember an inside joke that someone was there for as part of a stream. I might remember that somebody retweets me every time I go live. That might be the totality of our relationship. Some folks I have an extra stream relationship with. I would continue to engage with them, theoretically, outside of the system we've created of audience and broadcaster. These people have functionally subsumed the audience part of their relationship into something larger, something other. And I think I'm gonna subtle brag a little bit. I think all of this stuff is easier for me. I think being a broadcaster and having these relationships with my audience and with individuals therein is easier for me because I have done so much work practicing and engaging non-hierarchical relationship models. I have practiced finding it easier to consider people's value above and beyond the obvious, and I don't feel too personally tied to any individual person's connection to my fiscal well-being, which of course is the transactionary danger of these types of relationships. Someone subscribing or not subscribing, donating or not donating, does not, for me, lower or raise their esteem in my eyes. This is a conscious choice. In the same way, I endeavor not to value sex or romance over friendship. If somebody stops paying me to make content for whatever reason, it doesn't harm my relationship with them. If I notice a long-term viewer unsubscribes, I will notice that it's different, but it doesn't make me like them less or want to excise them from my community. It doesn't harm my relationship with them. And this is a personal ethical choice that I've decided to make a part of my relationship with my audience and with the individual members that make it up, because it aligns with my politics, relationship or otherwise. I have the privilege insulation to be able to say, and this is huge. This is a huge, huge part, because I think that my community interaction and the way that I interact with my fans takes bits and pieces from traditionally masculine and traditionally feminine behaviors, right? And we'll talk about this in a second. But I have privilege insulation to be able to say, as a man, I've never been treated inappropriately by a fan. I've never had anyone make an unsolicited sexual remark about me. I've never had, and if I had, it's always been easy for me to shrug off. If someone sexualizes me or objectifies me, I do not feel personally threatened by it, right? I can shrug off these overly familiar behaviors from my audience if they occur, because they're not as big of a threat to me. I'm isolated and insulated from shit culturally, like stalking. It's a product of who I am and of my gender presentation and an interaction with the social norms around the way people treat broadcasters. I have a safer environment to build my relationship with my audience than some people do. For example, if I get a direct message on Discord, say, from a fan I've never seen, my immediate response is not one where I have to worry that this is the beginning of harassment. I can share things. I can be vulnerable to you in a way that might otherwise invite a sense of entitlement to intimacy that a broadcaster who is a woman would not be able to do. They're not safely able to do that. Part of that is the intentional nature of the community. I try to teach folks that shit isn't okay, and we try to not attract folks with bad boundary issues. Part of it, though, is just straight up immunity to the sexist undertones that make intimacy of even the smallest degree dangerous to a broadcaster. In effect, while I'm not safe, because no one is safe when exposed to other humans, I'm certainly less likely to be harassed in some specific ways. Which is to say, I have the safety of masculine presentation and not immediately being socialized as an object to a lot of people. But I'm also able, because of the queerness of my audience, because of the ethos that we've built here, I'm able to perform emotional labor for my audience. I am able to perform behaviors of emotional intimacy with that audience. I can have my feelings at you, and I don't have to feel scared you're going to use them to hurt me. It's privilege is what it is. It's absolutely that. So it affects how I see my audience and the way I form relationships with them. I think, and we're going to get a little sexy here for a second. So kids, now might be the time to leave the room. I think that people often get the power dynamic of broadcaster and audience mixed up. People like to make senpai notice me jokes, and they like to talk about broadcasters like broadcasters are in an elevated position of power, which it can absolutely look like. You know, we have a platform, we have a spotlight. Those things can engender a feeling of power, but ultimately, let's be real here. I'm the submissive in this relationship. I mean, You're the subs, but we're the sub. Because what is our job as broadcasters if not to please you? To do the things you like, to make you happy, to entertain you, to pay attention to your needs and wants as a Gestalt entity, to do what we think will keep you engaged and coming back to us for more. We can, of course, disconnect whenever we want. And like any good dom-sub relationship, the power lies in the hands of the submissive to say, no more. He who can destroy a thing controls it, right? I can pull the plug. I can say, I don't want to play this game with you anymore, chat. But because you do such a lovely job keeping me fed and housed, and I like making you happy, I am glad to be at your service. Now, it's not a sex thing, right? Broadcasting does not arouse me sexually, but the power dynamics are the same, or functionally the same. So for me, the relationship between audience as a gestalt and broadcaster as a thing here to entertain and enlighten and support in some particular way is that kind of power dynamic. Recognizing it and treating our relationship with gentleness and care and having boundaries and being intimate in ways that feel safe according to my history, identity, and personal experiences make this relationship safe and comfortable. My relationship with you as audience is a special one with its own negotiated rules and protocols, even if it's a really weird one sometimes. I love weird stuff. I love how weird you are. And that's part of what this show is for. Because I care about you, my audience, as a nebulous entity, but I also care about you as specific individuals. And I'm inviting you to connect with me through your questions, and answering them helps me feel like I'm doing a part of my job. Giving you things to think about, helping you have a better, safer, more comfortable day than you did before you tuned in. The process of broadcasting, the process of creating content in role-playing games for you to enjoy, talking on Twitter, engaging with you on Discord, being a part of the community that I've fostered is intensely important and very much an emotionally satisfying relationship for me. Now, certainly, there is a tiny bearded German man from the 1800s in the back of my brain going, "Excuse me, Adam." My inner Karl Marx needs to recognize that there are labor and capital aspects of our relationship. But I will say this. The relationship that I have with you, my audience, has more integrity than any job I have ever had in my life. You pay me to do the things that I love, and that inspires me to keep doing them as better as I can every day. I want to improve constantly for you. In many ways, I am the closest to owning the means of production than I've ever been, and it's a remarkable experience. I am happy to serve you, my audience, more than I ever have any boss or manager in my life. There's a lot of very personal discourse to be had here for each and every broadcaster, because everyone has their own approach to this. And what works for one won't work for another. The reasons for emotional well-being, personal safety, and honestly, scale. But you're here for my opinion. And that's what that was. And I hope I did an all right job expressing myself on that point. Chat, I like you. I'm happy you're here. some of you give me money to keep doing this thing. And that's really nice too. And so on behalf of me and the folks who appreciate this space but can't afford to subscribe or donate, thank you. You, the Gestalt audience entity, are literally the only reason that this is happening. So thanks. I feel grateful for you every day. Every day that I get to sit down and do this thing. When I thank someone for resubscribing, I mean it. And I don't just mean it, thank you, I like having money. I mean, thank you for continuing to allow this space to exist for all of us. Feeling a little emotional. Damn. Well, that's episode number 4. Thank you so much for coming, everybody. This has been Office Hours, Hot for Teacher, a write-in relationship advice show from your favorite game master. If you want to get involved, go to www.adam-koebel.com. Click on that Hot for Teacher link, fill out the form, and I would love to answer your question on the air. I suppose I will see you next time, everybody. Thanks for coming. Bye.